San Mateo County Libraries welcomes Hetal Vasavada, creator of Milk and Cardamom website and cookbook, named one of the top cookbooks of 2019 by the San Francisco Chronicle. With the aim to get everyone excited to bake and cook dishes to share with loved ones, her delicious recipes have been featured in the New York Times, Food and Wine, Bon Appetit, and more. We're so glad to have you here today.
Thank you so much for having me. Honestly, growing up, I pretty much lived at the library. And I had mentioned earlier, my mom worked at Scholastic, so we were at the library quite a bit because we'd be donating books, the seconds of the books to the libraries. So now it's our go-to play date spot, and we like to meet up with my daughter's friends. And yeah, I'm really excited to be doing this event with you guys. So for anyone who might not know who I am, my name is Hetal Vasavada, and I am, my husband likes to say food entrepreneur because I do a lot of things. I do recipe development. So I've worked with startups and restaurants, creating recipes for them. I also did social media marketing for a lot of restaurants, places like Humphrey Slocum, Brenda's, the SF Cooking School, August 1-5, a ton of places. And then when the pandemic hit, I ended up pivoting my career to becoming having an online bakery. So I own a bakery that's only online. I do a drop every 2 weeks called Milk and Cardamom Sweets. I work out of San Mateo in Kitchentown, actually. So keep it local. But I wrote this cookbook in 2018. So I have a background in biochemistry. I have a degree in biochemistry with a master's in biomedical sciences, and I worked in healthcare for a number of years, and I hated it. The corporate life is not for me, but I love baking. I started baking when I was in college because my organic chemistry professor told me that if I could bake, I would pass organic chemistry lab, and I really wanted to pass class. It eventually became an obsession. Where I went from box cake mixes to actually baking from scratch and trying to understand the reasoning behind each ingredient and trying to master every technique. And it became like it was a place of zen for me. I know baking for a lot of people is like a place of chaos where they're like, I don't know what I'm doing. But I think with enough practice, because I definitely felt like that too, it gets to a place of zen, because if you follow the steps and you do it the same every single time, you will get the same exact result. Versus cooking, where sometimes you're like, add a little bit of this, add a little bit of that, and you can kind of be all over the place. I like accuracy. It speaks to my type A-ness. I ended up being that I hated my corporate job. I ended up going on MasterChef. I was on season 6, where I cooked and I cried and I baked and I cried and managed to somehow occasionally win a couple challenges. And weirdly enough, all the meat challenges, as I was a lifelong vegetarian. Well, I still am a vegetarian, and won a lot of meat challenges on the show. And I made it to top 6. When I got off MasterChef, that's when I started doing all the recipe development and working with like meal kit companies and startups and all that kind of stuff. In the past year, I have the bakery. I've been working on cookbook too, so let's hope I get a publisher soon. And I also have been working on my social media as a content creator and doing a little bit of recipe development for brands as well. But what inspired me to write this cookbook was, as I was learning how to bake in college, I noticed that these are all flavors I wanted as a kid. Like growing up, my mom did not buy box cake mix. Like baking is not a thing amongst Indians in general, because in India back then, at least, I don't think that's the case anymore, but ovens are not a normal part of like a kitchen in India. A lot of it's done either you have like pressure cooker cakes, steamed cakes, but their baking is just not a thing. My mom told me that they actually had a village baker where they would, during Diwali, would go give like flour and butter to, and they would make like naan katai, which is an Indian, it's like a cookie that's also in my cookbook, or they would make butter cookies and things like that. But their ovens were not a normal part of a kitchen. So I did not grow up with like grandma's chocolate chip cookie recipe or anything like that. I wanted to. I mean, I watched those Duncan Hines commercials and wanted it. But my mom definitely was not going to go buy the cake mix for me. But I did grow up with Indian desserts. So sweets in Indian culture hold a very, very important role. When you get married, the first thing you feed your husband and your family is a sweet to start, your new life with a sweet taste in your mouth. During Diwali, which is around the time of Hindu New Year, you bring boxes of sweets to each other's homes to celebrate, again, to start the new year with a sweetness in your mouth. When you do any big, even like when I would go and take a test, my mom would give me yogurt and gur, which is a jaggery, palm sugar, again, for good luck. And then on top of that, different events and celebrations have specific sweets tied to them. And it's different for people from various regions, but from where I'm from, like for some reason at baby showers, we always had jalebi and fafda. Fafda is not sweet, a savory item, but it's like we like our savory sweet combo. I'm Gujarati, we like it savory sweet. But they just hold such a significance. And that is what I kind of grew up with. I didn't get cake, but I definitely got like a bowl of siro, which is a semolina pudding. It's also in the cookbook, with a candle in it. That's what I got for a birthday. And I decided to start kind of merging the flavors of my childhood and mixing that with the things that I wanted, the American side of me, I guess. And it turned into this book. I had a placeholder in there and it fell, my bad. But in this book, I have a lot of traditional recipes, things like Jurmaki Laddu, which is, it's so traditional, I couldn't mess with it. It's like so well beloved amongst my family. I'm like, I can't mess with this recipe. But I did come up with a Gulab Jamun bundt cake recipe that actually has a life of its own. It became viral on like BuzzFeed, and now I also sell these in my bakery. But they're all flavors that I grew up with, from chikki, like brittle, to peanut laddus, burfis, which are fudges, usually made from either nuts or coconut. It's all in here, and it really was like a labor of love and like a love letter to the flavors I grew up with. And what I learned after I wrote this book is there are a lot of people who ate kulfi at Patel Brothers or at the Indian grocery store while their mom, picked through the vegetables. A lot of people could relate to my memories, but also the flavors. There's such a huge group of Indian Americans nowadays. And, it's further proven by people like Priya Krishna, who put out her book, Indian Niche, where she talks about her, like the food that she ate growing up as an Indian American kid. You have people like Khushbu Shah, who does the same thing and writes for Food and Wine. And I'm just really excited to be able to share my experiences on the dessert side, the sweet side, which I think is the better side in my opinion. But for today, I'm going to be showing you guys how to make chai. So Diwali was about, like 2 weeks ago. And during Diwali, for some reason, it was always my job, and I guess it's because I'm the eldest daughter, to make chai. When anyone came to your house, it's a part of Desi or Indian hospitality, or Desi means like anyone from basically South Asia, to offer a drink when someone comes to your home. It's just something you do, whether it's water, soda, chai, typically during Diwali. And because it's kind of like a drizzly, foggy night, I thought this would be perfect. So I'm going to show you my masala chai recipe from my cookbook. Now, everyone has a different chai recipe. There's no such thing as one single authentic chai recipe. It does not exist. Everyone has a different recipe based on the region they're from, based on their family, based on the things that can vary is just so much. The spices you use, do you use them whole? Do you use them ground? Your ratio of milk to water, it just varies so much across the board. But I think there are three things that make chai chai. First is using something called CTC tea, or crushed terra curl is what it means. So crushed terra curl is just that. It's basically the offshoots of tea that's crushed, torn apart, and then dried. And when they dry, they kind of curl up on each other. And this is what it looks like. Now this is very cheap compared to actually getting black tea leaves that are whole. You can see that it's like little, kind of almost like pellets. That is what you're looking for. These fibers you see, that's just pieces of cardamom. I have a tea that has cardamom ground into it, but that is what you're looking for. So
you actually muted yourself, Hetal.
Oh, Hetal, can you sorry.
Oh, sorry. I think I got muted. So I was saying, did you guys hear about the crushed terra curl? When did I get muted? Where did I get left off? Okay.
Once you adjusted the camera and you went back up. That's
cool. Yeah. All right. So I'll say you don't want to use your fancy tea for this. Don't use your whole leaf black tea. Leave that for like a, a tea party or something like this. For chai, you got to use your CTC tea, and it's cheap. You can get it at the Indian grocery store. You can order it online. There's small brands like Kolkata Chai or the Chai Box or One Stripe Chai, which are all South Asian owned and from the US. The one I'm using today is from Kolkata Chai, which is in New York. But you got to use CTC tea. It also has a more tannic flavor to it. And this was specifically created by the British in India because they wanted to create a revenue stream. They were taking all the tea from India and selling it back in the UK, but they realized they had a whole billion people in India that they could market and like get them hooked to tea and get them addicted to and have a whole new revenue stream. And this is where it came from. Initially, they were trying to get Indians to drink it the way they do, which is like steeped in water and maybe sugar if you're lucky, with a touch of cream. And Indians are like, that's cool, no thanks. And we have an Ayurvedic drink that is similar to chai, where it does have a lot of spices in it. And they just kind of mashed both of those together into chai as we know today. So in reality, it is something that was given to us by the British, but we turned it Indian, and now it's so quintessentially Indian that you cannot, it's hard to like really think, when you think of like foods from India, you automatically think of masala chai. The other thing that makes cha, in my opinion, is the ratio of water to milk. I like to do like 1 part water, 4 parts milk. I want it to be heavy on milk. A lot of times, like when I go to the cafes and stuff, it's not thick enough. It's not rich enough. It feels almost like I'm drinking spicy water with a touch of cream, which is not what you want. You want the rich, luxurious feel of like milk. You can totally use oat milk or almond or soy milk in this case too. But you want to use more milk than water in this case. And the third thing is the way you make it. So I'll show you. And the way you make it is you got to make it in a pot. You don't just like heat water and then put the tea in and then add milk. You got to cook it all together, all of it together. All right. So in here, I already have my water. Let me move it out so you can see. I'm going to put it on medium heat. In here, I'm going to put in about 1.5, and this is going to make 2 cups, 1.5 tablespoons of masala. Well, this is masala chai, but this is CTC tea with ground cardamom in it and a little bit of ground cinnamon. I'm going to add more spices on top of this. You can get it without the spices too, and you can get just the plain tea as well. Excuse me. So add that in there, and then you're going to add your sugar. Now you can use as much or as little sugar as you want, or completely omit it if that's not your thing. And you're going to bring this to a boil. Excuse me, I'm going to drink some water. My apologies. So I'm going to bring this to a boil. And so normally when you're making tea, you normally have the water boiling, then you add it to the tea, you let that steep, and then you remove your tea bag. Not the case with chai at all. You really want to boil this, get all the flavors from that tea. And the other thing with CTC tea is it has a lot of tannin in it, which is kind of gives it a little bit of bitterness, a little bit of a drying effect. The more and the longer you steep this, the more of that you will get, and that's called kadak chai, which is just means strong tea. It's more like, my dad says it has more caffeine in it. I don't know if that's scientifically proven, but that's what they say. They say it's strong tea because it's more caffeine. All right. So now in here, I'm going to also add my spices. I have fresh ginger. You can mince it or you can slice it if you're lazy like me. So I'm just adding, this is about 1/2 inch of ginger. You can add more or less up to your taste. My mom would actually in the winters make do like a lot of ginger, like double the amount of ginger, just because it's a warming spice. A bit of cinnamon. I'm going to use whole cinnamon. Cardamom. I'm doing about 6 cloves. 4 whole cloves of 4 whole cloves. And then some star anise. I didn't have a whole star anise, so these are just kind of pieces and bits of a star anise. Now, every recipe is different. Everyone's gonna, sometimes they use ground cinnamon, sometimes some people use whole cinnamon. Some places add even lemongrass into theirs. This is just the way my grandmother taught me. And you're gonna let this simmer for 30 seconds or so, not too long. You can really smell it. It smells really, really good. While this simmers for a little bit, let me talk to you about buying your spices. I highly, highly suggest putting as much thought into buying your spices as you do when you buy your groceries, your fruits and vegetables at home. I like to support small businesses like Diaspora Co. and Burlap and Barrel. They buy their spices directly from farmers and cut out the middleman, which means the farmers get more money. They also make sure they're organic. So when buying cardamom, you want to make sure there's no breakage or crackage in the ends or tips of the cardamom. That means it was picked too late in the season and that all the essential oils that make up those flavors have essentially evaporated off. And you're going to need a lot more of it to get any flavor. All right, so this has been simmering. I'm going to add in my milk. And we're going to stir this, and we want to bring this to a boil. And the way my grandma taught me is to let the milk simmer up, turn the heat low, simmer up again, turn the heat low again, simmer up again. So let it simmer up the sides 3 times. Why 3? I don't know. It's just what my grandmother told me, and I trust her. But yes, the other thing with cardamom, before I forget, is if you see scarring on the cardamom pods, that means it's organic. That means that it's okay. Cardamom tends to get this one bug called thrips. They don't damage like the flavor or anything in the cardamom. It just scars the outside pod. And a lot of companies will use pesticides to get rid of the thrips because it's just a cosmetic issue. So if you're looking to see if is it like truly organic, it's going to have a couple scars on it, but you don't want any cracking. You want them to be whole. If there's any cracking, pick too late, not going to have a lot of flavor. If you're ever using ground cardamom, like pre-ground cardamom, like that you buy in a jar, always use like an extra 1/4 teaspoon. The flavors of cardamom are really volatile, not meaning that it's bad for you. It just means it's super sensitive to temperature and it will evaporates off very quickly. So it's just not as pungent as like freshly ground cardamom. If you're using a nut milk or like a non-dairy milk, it is not going to come on simmer up the sides. In that case, you're just going to bring it to a boil and let it boil for 3 minutes before serving it. If you're using, I've noticed oat milk does simmer up the sides. you can follow the directions as for normal milk with oat milk. So we're gonna let this come to a boil. Growing up, my morning breakfasts were actually masala chai and Parle G biscuits. Parle G biscuits are like, they are the most eaten biscuits in the world, or cookies in the world, even more popular than Oreos. Biscuit making was brought to India during World War II because a lot of the factories in England were converted into, like they were making, things to support the war. And the biscuit and cookie factories were brought to India, and they were all manufactured in India for a long time. So obviously it made itself into Indian mainstream. So a lot of like British biscuits, like Jim Jams, bourbon biscuits, became super popular to have with chai, or even cake rusk. And but they're just like the very quintessential morning breakfast for a lot of people. Like, you dip your biscuits in chai and enjoy it. Parle G is called a glucose biscuit. I don't know how to explain it. It's kind of like a digestive, but not really. It's crunchier than a digestive. But if you're ever at the Indian store, I highly recommend getting it. Every mom has a packet of Parle G in their purse if they've got little kids. I keep them in the car for my daughter. To definitely give it a try. That's why my heat was low, too low. So I'm gonna bring this to a boil. It's gonna come to a rolling boil. I saw that someone asked, you bring it up simmer. You will let it come to a rolling boil. You can see it's boiling a little bit now. Excuse me. So once it comes to a rolling boil, what happens is it'll simmer up the sides. And this is why also you never walk away from a pot of chai, because it will overflow, get into your stove, harden into a gooey mess, and then you're gonna have to clean it. And your mom will yell at you if you're young, because I definitely got yelled at quite a bit for letting the chai overflow all over the stove and making a mess. There's also an Indian store in Belmont. There's Namaste Plaza in Belmont, if you wanna check that out. It's right on Ralston and El Camino, near like the PetSmart. Yeah, and then there's India Cash and Carry in Foster City. That place is great. Much, much bigger selection. And then there's another one on Hillsdale, near the cross section of Saratoga and Hillsdale. All right, you can see it's getting kind of foamy up top. That's what you're looking for. So this is when you're like, don't take your eye off of it, because the moment you look away, it will spill everywhere and it will be really, really sad. So let's get this to a boil. What I believe the simmering does is it almost creates like that foam, and it also I think thickens up the milk and gives it that like nice rich texture, in my opinion. So see, it's coming up. It's coming up. Slowly but surely, coming to a rolling boil. You see it? Simmering. So take it off the heat. Stir it so it goes back down. Put it back on the heat. Now, if you were to ask any other Indian person how to make chai, it would be a completely different step. Some people might be like, oh no, we just let it simmer a little bit, or we let it simmer just one time. It really depends. Everyone is so different. I think that's the beauty of chai. At our wedding, at my wedding, we actually went in a circle as an icebreaker. We asked everyone what their family chai recipe was. And there was not one single common recipe amongst everyone, which I thought was really interesting. All right, and this is it. So I'm gonna pour this into a cup. I'm gonna show you the cup real quick because it brings me joy. This is a traditional chai cup. This is made by a maker called Fatima's Clay here in the US. But this is like, if you were gonna, this is a much larger version of what you would probably get in India. In India, it's like, I would say like a third of the size, because they make their chai very, very concentrated, and usually with buffalo milk, which is very thick and rich. And then you're gonna pour it and try not to spill it everywhere. It's so difficult not to spill it though, not gonna lie. It's easier when you have like a pan that has a spout. I'm gonna give it a good pour. I spilled a little, but that's okay. That's why I have napkins. Yeah, in 34 years, I still not have figured out how to pour chai without spilling it. It's just a skill I have not gotten. One day though, one day. And this is my masala chai. Very cozy, very aromatic, and perfect for a very, very, you know, cold wintry day. And then I guess we're open for Q&A, Cheryl? Cherry? Whoops.
Yeah. So let's look at the questions that people submitted before when they registered. Our first question is, what's your favorite cardamom recipe?
Ooh. Okay, so cardamom is like, I call it like Indian vanilla. Like, you know how vanilla is in every dessert recipe? It doesn't matter what, if it's a cookie, cake, whatever, there's always vanilla. That's how it is in India. There's cardamom in every recipe. It doesn't matter what sweet or mithai that you're making, there's cardamom in it. For me, my favorite has to be, I have a fruit tart recipe in here. So growing up, it's the Basundi fruit tart.
Ooh.
It's delicious, but it has a cardamom pastry cream in it. Growing up, we used to have something called, I'm going to say it because it's the only way to say it, fruit salad. Okay, fruit salad, which is like a bastardized version of Basundi. Basundi is a dessert. It's basically fruit and custard. But we would do it where it's like more like a soup. It would be like heavy cream and milk and condensed milk and cardamom and a little bit of saffron. And then you'd have fruit in it, like grapes and almonds and bananas and apples and pears. And it was like a sweet dessert soup. And it was really, really good. I know it sounds weird, but this is like the traditional Indian dessert served at like 90s Indian family dinners. And it's like my favorite. The cardamom and milk flavor together is just so amazing. It's very comforting and cozy.
It sounds like it. It's great that you shared so many facts about how to pick cardamom, since it's so important and it's in a lot of the recipes.
Yes.
Someone is asking, what's the name of your bakery?
It's called Milk and Cardamom Sweets.
Milk and Cardamom Sweets.
Yes.
Almost like her cookbook.
Yes. Also, another fun fact about cardamom before I forget, cardamom, just like, say, wine, spices in general take a lot of their flavors from the terroir. So Indian cardamom tends to be a little bit more mentholy, a little bit more on the savory side. There's a lot of cardamom that's grown in Guatemala that tends to be more floral, more vanilla-ish, lighter in flavor, not as mentholy. So when you're looking to buy cardamom, I like to use Indian cardamom for chai, but if I'm making something where I'm not going to be cooking the cardamom, like putting in a pastry cream or mixing it into like a custard or something, then I like to use Guatemalan cardamom because it's not as like harsh.
Oh, wow. That's so interesting. Let's see. Our next question is, oh, here's a good one. What's a recipe you suggest for a novice cook? And also they said your book is just gorgeous.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate it. Okay, a good easy one is gari stuffed Italian wedding cookies. It's literally, you blend a bunch of nuts together, add some ghee, mix it together, roll it into balls, make a very simple cookie dough, and you just wrap the little nut balls in the cookie dough and bake it. Super, super simple, very, very easy to follow. Another easy one is my berry papadoy. Again, toss everything in a blender, put it in the oven, put it in the fridge, and then you're good to go the next day. It's a good make-ahead dessert. It's a custard that's eggless, so it's made with heavy whipping cream. Typically, you use jaggery, or palm sugar, that's what sweetens it. I use fruit or berries in this case. A little touch of condensed milk for sweetness as well. And then it's set with yogurt. So you add yogurt to it, and that yogurt, when you put it in the oven at a low heat, helps set the entire custard.
Oh my gosh, that sounds so good.
Really good. It's a good brunch one. Like if you want to make it the night before and then serve it the next morning for like a brunch or breakfast event, it's great.
Yeah, talk about waking up to something extra sweet. Let's see. Oh, someone's asking, how do you use black cardamom?
So black cardamom, hold on, I'll be right back. I'm going to show it to you. I have some.
I love these questions. Keep them coming.
Grab it. Oh my gosh, I lost it. I thought I had it out, but I don't.
Oh no.
I'm coming. Hold on. All right, I'm in. All right, so here's black cardamom. I'm going to show you green cardamom versus black cardamom and the difference. Here is the difference. Black cardamom, you can see they're ginormous compared to green cardamom. Make it a little closer for you guys. You see? Very, very different. And by aroma, black cardamom has almost like a smoky, barbecue-y, almost like barbecue chips. A little bit of like cedar, campfire type of smell to it. It's used mostly in savory dishes, lots of biryanis or rice dishes, to give it a lot of like that fire cooked flavor. I have not used it in desserts, so I'm very intrigued to try it in a dessert.
That's awesome. I didn't even know there were different types of cardamom.
Spices, yeah, spices are just as variable as fruits and vegetables. I think a lot of people just kind of go and buy like whatever they see in the grocery store shelf. And I highly recommend check out Burlap and Barrel's website, check out Diaspora Co. and Spicewella is another one. They are not sustainably sourced, but they have a good variety and they're small packets. So if you're like, I want to just try it, Spicewella is a good one to order from.
That's great. Ooh, we have some questions about your time on MasterChef.
Sure.
Someone says they really love your Indian dessert cookbook. And so they're wondering what it was like competing on the show. They are a World Food Championship dessert finalist, and they auditioned for MasterChef during Shaun White's season in SF. Yeah, but they didn't get picked as the first autistic chef on MasterChef. However, they are known as the first autistic chef to ever compete at the World Food Championships in dessert. That's awesome.
Cute. Yeah, that's amazing. The show was interesting. My contract ended, so I can talk about everything and anything now.
Ooh.
The contract was 3 years. So you sign a 3-year contract where you basically are owned by them. They own your image. So there are pots and pans out there that you will find at your local TJ Maxx or Ross with my face on it. They also have the option to take 10 to 15% of your income. So the reason why I waited so long to write my cookbook was to wait to get out of that contract. Otherwise, they could take 15% of any money I made off this book. And the show itself, it was fun. But there's a lot of changes that could have been made. They definitely played me to be like the model minority Indian. For some reason, they assumed that, I didn't drink. So they kept giving me orange juice instead of champagne when they celebrated things. They'd ask me about the library instead of like, and asking everyone else what they thought about the wine cellar, or there's a lot of like the growth that could happen. But the good experience for MasterChef for me was I gained a lot of confidence. Going into it, the reason why I even tried out is because I didn't know where I stood. Yeah, my friends and family are going to tell me my food is good, right? Like they're obligated. But how do I compare to a regular old stranger, I just wanted to know, like, is it worth me leaving my career in healthcare to try and pursue something in food and taking that leap? And it definitely gave me the confidence to do so. Winning as many challenges I did, getting the feedback from the judges that my food was good, and like them telling me what tweaks I could make to each dish to make it even that much better. It was just really helpful, and it's almost like boot camp. You just like learn a lot from the experience. Did it give me PTSD? Yeah. Have I watched a season after me? Definitely not. But overall, I think it was a good experience to give me the confidence boost I needed that I didn't have at the time. Let's see.
That's awesome. And yeah, I can definitely see getting PTSD. I think cooking shows, like that's honestly such an amazing accomplishment to be able to, you know, go on there and compete. And we love that, you know, you're able to now share your recipes and have a cookbook that they don't have to take 10 to 15% of.
And I was like, yes. But yeah, it was difficult. I see that someone asked me if I watch any of their cooking shows. I do. I love the Great British Bake Off. I'm obsessed.
That's a good one.
It just makes me feel so warm and cozy inside. And it's just like, I love seeing the contestants helping each other out. My season, we actually all liked each other very much, and we'd help each other out all the time. And the producers took us to the side and said, we're too nice to each other. And that we need to create drama. I wish the American audience would enjoy shows like Great British Bake Off a little bit more. You know, without all the fighting and the back talking and all that stuff. But, you know, it is what it is. They got to, you know, make a show that's going to actually get watched. I also love Top Chef. It's a favorite. And I don't know if you consider it a cooking show, but Nailed It on Netflix. It makes me absolutely cackle.
Oh, I have not seen that one yet.
Oh my God. It's so good. I mean, they give them impossible tasks. They're like told to make this elaborate cake that probably took the person like 3 days to make. And they're like, you have 2 hours, go. And like, they're like trying to, you know, like mold like a whole castle cake with their hands while the buttercream is melting. And I mean, I feel for them because I know that feeling, but it's also very entertaining. And they all are like very fun, and like, there's no mean-spiritedness to the show. It's just like, let's have fun.
Yeah, that sounds awesome. Someone did ask, would you want to compete again?
I would. I don't know. It depends, honestly. The thing is, I would love to compete, but the contracts are so insane that it just would deter me. They want to own every aspect of your life. You're not allowed to do any marketing. You're not allowed to even like work on your own business, really. Like, it's the contracts are wild. And I if anyone wants to try out for a reality TV show, I highly recommend reading the contract. And if you don't understand it, please get a lawyer to look at it, because you're signing away quite a bit of power to a company. For 3 years, I had to ask permission to do anything, permission to do a pop-up, permission to work with brands, permission to go on someone's YouTube channel, permission to even do my own social media. And they said no many times. So, you know, yes, you go on a show to get a platform, but at the same time, they also hinder you from utilizing that platform to grow bigger. So you really have to strategize, utilize your social media, because that's one thing they can't really have too much say. I wasn't allowed to do video work. I could do photos though. So, like I took a social media course and everything to try and figure out how do I extend this 15 seconds of fame into a long-term business for myself.
That's some really great advice. I'm sure your posts on Instagram were very much appreciated by your fans.
Yeah.
Someone is asking if you're able to, can you tell us what your next cookbook is about?
So the next cookbook, so it's going to be a savory cookbook. That's where I'm going to leave it. So taking a little bit of a step away from baking and bringing my accuracy and precision obsession to savory food.
Ooh, that's exciting.
Yeah. It's basically like writing a savory book for people who are baker brained like me. who like, I want to weigh everything. I'm like, you know, when they say like half an onion, I'm like, half an onion, half an onion can be a lot and half an onion can also be very little. I want to weigh it.
Yeah, that's how my mom is with cooking. She's like, just throw it in, just taste it. And I'm like, I need instructions.
I want accuracy. I want to know like, okay, how many grams of onion, how many grams of, of tomatoes. I need the ratios to be right.
Speaking of which, someone asked, there's a that they've noticed a big variation in the green cardamom price. And so they're asking, what should they look for?
So recently there's a lot of big storms that happen, similar to vanilla. The crops are just lost because the buds were lost. Diaspora is not that bad in pricing. I think it's around $9 or $12. And this is enough to last you this lasts me quite a long time, about 6 to 9 months for me. So it's not that bad of an investment. Also, don't store your spices in the fridge. They attract moisture and it will make it go gross. I know some people put their spices in the fridge. Don't do it.
Oh, I've never heard of that, but that's good advice. Speaking of advice, someone is asking, do you have any more advice for bakers who don't have baker brain?
I highly suggest investing in a scale and investing in a thermometer, like an infrared thermometer if you can find one. They're difficult to find now during COVID days, but pre-COVID, very easy to find. Those two things will help you get more accurate. You want to bake by grams. And the reason why I say this is because, for example, flour, when you're packing it into your 1 cup, you could pack it tightly. You could also pack it very lightly. And you can be off by 65 grams, which will make the difference between your cookies spreading and your cookies staying round in the oven after they bake and staying that way and being dry, right? So that is probably a scale is probably one of the best ways to make sure that your bakes will be like at least 90% accurate. The rest of it is just really technique, right? Like creaming the butter and sugar and making you do that for the length that the recipe requires you, not just mixing until the butter and sugar comes together, but if it says 5 minutes, doing the 5 minutes. And the thermometer is important because if you're doing like things like pot de crèmes, breads, things like that, you want to know temperature, what's going on, temperature of your water, temperature of the oven, etc. Those two things will help you significantly. I have a cheap $13 scale from from Amazon that I bought. And then I've recently treated myself to a fancy food scale from OXO, which is I think $50. But you can serve $13 scale is great. I use that thing for 6 years. Like, you don't need the fancy one, but if you want to get fancy, you totally can.
Someone also asked, do you have favorite brands for the flours you use in baking?
So it depends what I'm making. So King Arthur brand tends to be higher in protein. So protein is what makes gluten. Well, gluten is a protein, makes gluten. Gluten is what makes your breads dense, chewy. So if I'm making something like bagels or even a croissant, I will use King Arthur flour because it tends to be around in like 33 to 35% protein range. And that's what you're looking for. And they make great artisan bread flours and rye and just a lot of good bread baking flours in general, because that's their niche. And then for desserts and sweets, cakes and stuff, I tend to go to Bob's Red Mill because they're lower in protein. And they tend to do more like pastry flours and cake flours and things like that, which are, again, very low protein and make for a nice light bake. For cookies, I like to use King Arthur, like chocolate chip cookies. I'll use King Arthur, a mix of their all-purpose and their bread flour to get that nice chewy cookie texture that I really enjoy. But think about what texture you want and then utilize the flour. So if you like chewy, dense, something that, you know, gives a little bite, high gluten, go for King Arthur. If you want it light, tender, melts in your mouth, go for Bob's Red Mill.
That's really interesting. Speaking of baking, we have some people asking about your bakery. They're asking if all your items are currently sold out right now and how to buy your baked goods.
So my next sale will be December 11th, but let me confirm that date. It might be the 13th or 11th because I know it's one of those days. I should know this. December 11th at 9 a.m. I'll do a drop and it'll be on my website. I'm not doing any more of that until January, just because last year during the post-mail apocalypse, I got burned and a lot of my cakes were delivered really, really, really late. And I lost a lot of money last holidays doing refunds. So I decided to save myself the stress and just not do a sale for Christmas this year. But I'll be back in January. I see someone asked me if I'm going to do a physical eat-in shop in the Bay Area. If I could afford rent, I would, but it's just far too expensive to be able to do that. And opening up a bakery or any sort of restaurant situation in the Bay is just requires millions. And that's not something I have.
So be sure to buy her cookbook and then pre-order the next one coming out soon. Yeah, during the pandemic, a lot of people seem to do the like online bakeries and like drops like that.
Yeah. It's cost saving. I don't have to worry about rent. I mean, I pay rent, but I don't have to worry. I pay for the hours I use and that's it, right? But also because I do a drop, I don't have to worry about overhead, about, you know, making cakes that might not get sold or having slow weeks or anything like that, because I just make the amount that got sold and call it a day. And it saves me the stress. The other thing is that I can control my hours. You know, if someone's ordering a cake, 2 cakes today, and then I get an order for 13 the next day and an order for 20 and then an order for 1, it's just not consistent enough. And the other thing is like restaurant life is not conducive to family life. Like I'm a mom. And one of the things I love about being self-employed is being able to be the chaperone at, you know, school trips and be able to go volunteer and do all those things. And restaurant life is not conducive to that. You know, you're waking up, especially for bakeries, you're in at 3 a.m., you know, 3 to 4 a.m. to start your bakes. And you're not out until like much later, like what, 5 or 6.
That's actually a great segue into our next question. Someone asked how you first got into cooking, because they love cooking for their family and getting creative, but planning recipes, shopping, cooking, and cleaning can become so draining that they end up ordering takeout instead. What advice do you have for people to stay motivated?
So one of the things that gets me really excited is actually going to the farmers markets and buying produce that gets me excited. Like, oh, fun, purple cauliflower. I definitely want to cook that. That's going to be beautiful. Or, oh, like these tomatoes are insane. I'm so excited to make a salad out of it, or pasta sauce with it. So buying produce that gets you excited isn't one thing. But also, I'm one of those weirdos that goes to the grocery store like 2 or 3 times a week. I don't buy for the whole week. I buy for my mood. So I'll buy enough food for maybe say Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday. I'll go back to the grocery store, or I'll do an order through like Shipt and get grocery delivery, and then do another order for like Thursday, Friday, and I'll figure out Saturday, Sunday later. That way I'm not wasting food. I'm eating what I'm craving at the moment, and you don't have to stress about it. The cleaning part, there's no way around it. My rule in my house is if I cook, you clean. So whoever cooks doesn't have to clean.
That's a great rule. I fully support that rule. As the person who does not cook, I will happily clean.
Yes. I'm a big fan of one-pot meals or one sheet pan meals to help reduce the cleaning aspect of it. I know a lot of people, they'll prep everything. So they'll like take Sunday, buy all the things they need, cut it all up, chop it all up, slice it. put it in a Tupperware container and put it in the fridge. And then you're doing cleanup just for prep on Sunday. And the rest of the week, you're just tossing everything in a pan. And you just have the pan to clean up and maybe a couple measuring teaspoons and tablespoons if you have. But I like one pot meals. Soups, great. Roasted veggies with like some sort of either bread or sauce, wonderful. But yeah.
That is great advice. I am wondering, since you mentioned your daughter earlier, does she like to cook with you?
She does. She loves baking with me and cooking with me. It started at very young age, like 2. She'd roll up and she'd like, she is a hype woman. So I always tell her, like, you need to stand back because, at 2, their motor skills aren't exactly the most fantastic. And she would sit in the background and she'd be like, oh man, chocolate. That looks good. And then she'd be like, can I lick the she couldn't say spatula. She'd be like, smashula. Can I lick the spatula, mommy? I have a video of it up on my Instagram actually, where I'm making brownies and she's in the background just hyping me up. Eventually I let her kneel near some of the tools and she'll mix or she'll add things. She likes to dump things into the pot or the bowl. Baking with kids is a fantastic way to teach them patience. I actually nannied for a couple years when I was in grad school. And I worked for a family that had a son that was autistic, and I worked with their occupational and behavioral therapists, and they had mentioned to bake with him because it helps explain patience very well. They have to wait until everything is mixed. They have to wait until it bakes, wait till it cools to enjoy it. So it's a great way to teach patience, in my opinion. And also following and reading directions, because we all know like 6-year-olds struggle with that.
And even some adults. I think that's also a great way to practice like trial and error, because I feel like with cooking, there's so much trial and error. And sometimes the first time you make something, you're like, oh, this is not good.
Problem solving. Like, okay, well, this didn't turn out the way I want it to, but how can I save it so that I'm not tossing it in the trash? What else can I make with it? Yeah. Makes you think out of the box.
Yeah, for sure. Since you mentioned easy one pot meals earlier, do you have any comments on the Instant Pot? And do you know if your new cookbook will have any recipes that can be made in one?
I do not own an Instant Pot. I don't have a family big enough to need one. It's just 2.5 humans, right? The Instant Pot, the smallest I think is a 6-quart, which is a lot of food for 2.5 people. So I've never needed an Instant Pot. I also grew up with like the old school Indian whistle top pressure cookers. So like the way I know how to cook anything in a pressure cooker is like how many whistles. It's like, oh, rice, 2 whistles, lentils, 4 whistles. I don't have a pressure cook. I don't have an Instant Pot, but I have a regular pressure cooker that my mom got me from India that is like been passed down. Yes, they can be terrifying. They scare the crap out of me when I was a kid, and they scare Ilara too because the whistle is so loud. But yeah, I haven't had to get an Instant Pot. I know I'm way behind, but I know there's a lot of bloggers and like Indian Instant Pot cookbooks out there too. Oh, yes, my next cookbook will definitely be vegetarian. I'm vegetarian. I grew up vegetarian. I've never had any meat in my life. So yeah, the next one will be vegetarian for sure.
Ooh, that's awesome. I'm sure we're all looking forward to it. A fun question. Someone asked if you've ever done a farmer's market, like where you sell your baked goods.
I have not been able to get the license for it. So in San Mateo County, you have to get a special farmer's market license. In order to get the license, it's like, I think it's a process. So I have not applied for it, but I have considered it because I've been to the San Carlos and the Belmont farmers markets. And I'm like, I wonder if I would do well, but maybe next summer, we'll see. That'll be like, the next step of the plan.
Yeah, looking forward to that. All right, it looks like we have time for one more question. So I'm going to ask, what was it like writing a cookbook versus blogging?
Okay, very different things. So I'm going to give you a very intimate look into the publishing and cookbook writing process that many people don't talk about. So my publisher, it was Page Street. So if you've never heard of Page Street, it is an indie publisher that is distributed by Macmillan. But they move fast. It's one of those publishers that they get in and out real quick. They work with a lot of authors and in the hopes that one of them is going to hit it big, right? I definitely got taken. I mean, I'll be I got paid $15,000 for this book, which is nothing. I worked 6 months to get this book done. It was 75 recipes. I recipe tested every single recipe more than 6 times, and also had recipe testers that tested the recipes and gave me feedback to make sure they were accurate. That fee also included the cost of all the photos that I took. That is very little compared to most cookbooks. Most cookbooks, I now know that other cookbook authors that came out the same year I did, who did just as well as I did in sales, made 6 figures. So it is not normal. They also, because it's a small publisher and they want to get in and out so fast, they initially were like, can you finish this in 5 months? And I was like, haha, no, give me an extra month. And the reason why I had to go with Page Street is because I tried to get a book agent. So the way a process goes is you as an author find a book agent. A book agent has all these publisher friends that then they will send your proposal out to, and in the hopes that either it goes to auction, which means multiple publishers want your cookbook and will bid to get the ability to publish it, or one publisher takes it and you're good. But they're the ones that will shop your book to the publishers. There are many publishers, most publishers don't allow you as an author to pitch them. You need to go through a book agent. I couldn't get a book agent. Everyone kept saying my book was too niche. That dessert books are already very difficult to sell, and an Indian dessert book on top of that would be even far too difficult, and that it wouldn't get too many sales, thus they cannot take me on. So Page Street, they do allow author pitches. And I was like, you know what? I'm just going to pitch them. And they took it. I got my foot in the door. But I had to quit my job, quit everything I was doing to focus solely on this book for those 6 months. I did nothing but bake for 6 months to get this thing out. They didn't help with marketing, so I had to do all the marketing myself. I ended up having to hire a PR person because, you know, I wrote this cookbook, but if no one knows about it, no one's going to buy it, right? So that ended up actually costing me $15,000. So I broke even at the end of the day, and I got my very first paycheck, and it's been, what, 2 years since the book was published? 2019. Yeah, I got my very first paycheck for my book this year, and it was $700. So it is definitely not a process where, don't think that, you know, people who publish books make a lot of money off of them. It is not a money-making scheme. It is a labor of love. It is a huge labor of love. Very difficult because for a blog, I usually, because I did the photos myself, I treat it as very similar to like writing for a blog. I could do that. I could make it, work on it, finesse it, take the photo, call it a day. Most cookbook authors will actually write everything and then maybe take a week and do a full photo shoot. So they'll hire a photographer, hire a studio, have a food stylist, and they'll hire food assistants, and they'll make, like, you know, whatever recipes they want to photograph, and then photograph it at the studio in 1 week. So they'll just make everything from the book and do it that way. I did it very similar to blog, where it's like, write the recipe, get it right, take a photo. But yeah, it took a while. And I was able to get out of my contract with Page Street because of my lovely book agent that I have now. So hopefully the next one's into a bigger and better. And if you want to learn more about the cookbook publishing process, Priya Krishna wrote a wonderful article for the New York Times about basically how authors, especially women of color, authors are getting taken advantage by a lot of small publishers who will pay them next to nothing, using the excuse that it's too niche of a book or market. There's, I want to say, where was she? She wrote an Instant Pot cookbook, got paid, I think, $2,000 for her book with Callisto, which is another similar type of publisher. She never got anything from it. It's wild. Like, publishing is a very, like, if you're a noob, like I was a noob, and no one really talks about how much they get paid or what's normal. And I was like, 50,000, that sounds great. Yeah, let's do it. And then my book comes out and I talk to other authors and they're like, oh yeah, I made like 100,000. I'm like, what? So I'm hoping more people talk openly about it, because that's how you're going to get your fair share in the end. And you can ask your worth.
That's amazing advice. And I really hope the second cookbook does even better and that you definitely get paid your worth.
Yes.
All right. So we are 4 minutes past. So I just want to thank you, Hetal, and thanks everyone who joined us tonight. I hope everyone learned something new and will try to make their own masala chai at home or one of Hetal's other amazing recipes. Please check out our upcoming author talks at smcl.org/events. And we also appreciate it if you could tell us how SMCL did with this program at smcl.org/rate-this-event. Have a good night, everyone, and be sure to go to your local library to borrow Hetal's cookbook.
Yes.
And, you know, try out all these amazing recipes, or just look through it for the pictures. They're amazing.
Thank you. Also, if you guys do make something from the book, tag me at Milk and Cardamom on Instagram. I love seeing everyone's recreations, and it brings me a lot of joy seeing people trying the dishes for my book.